All right, folks, hello and welcome back to Online English Class. Today we're going to be beginning OTN 4, which analyzes Act 4 of King Lear, and we are just today going to be conducting an SQ3R for that piece of text. So it should be a relatively succinct class today, and we'll be spending some lengthier class periods actually analyzing how the characters develop and how that relates to Shakespeare's meaning. Next week. Okay, so we'll be finishing up the play next week, looking at Act 4 and also Act 5. And then we will be taking our test next week, at the end of next week, turning it in on Monday of the following week. And then we'll be spending the remainder of our time together before your exam preparing for your free response question. Okay, so we've got a neat and tidy little conclusion coming. We need to be succinct and concise in our analysis, although there is much to meditate on here. Okay, so before we get into our SQ3R, let's just quickly run back through the top of the week announcements as the week is closing down here. Need to make sure that you are completing your discussion grade procedure on a daily basis. Okay, I appreciate you guys' thoughtful engagement with that that I've seen so far. I've been delighted by your comments for the most part. Okay. Also, you need to make sure your OTNs 2 and 3 are complete. All right, I'll be checking those for homework grades whenever the time is right. Okay, so I'll just be asking for some email confirmation of that at some point. All right, need to make sure that you are completing progress check 8. Okay, progress check 7 should already be in the rear view. And you need to be working on progress check 8. Again, we'll be using these progress checks as some raw material that I will be using to help describe and help you prepare for your May 13th exam. Okay. Aside from this, just make sure that you're working on your quarter 4 essay. It's going to be due May 20th, and your MWE for the road, which is also due May 20th. Okay. So with all that in order, now let's go ahead and get into our analysis of Act 4. Okay. So obviously yesterday we finished our analysis of Act 3. Which basically offered to us some important characterization of the two protagonists of both the major plot and the subplot, Lear and Gloucester, as both of them suffer greatly, suffer great reversals, suffer a kind of contrapasso for their inability or their unwillingness or their failure to develop worldviews and to lead their kingdoms, lead to their families, and to lead their own lives according to a kind of the kind of natural law that is embedded in the world, the law that one has a responsibility to love one's neighbor, to be a good neighbor. Okay, but on a deeper level, right, even as the logic of Lear and Gloucester's punishment because of their failure to do so, again, makes sense, even as nature itself, all right, sort of rebels against them, right, Edmund, the natural offspring of Gloucester, the storm, a natural element, right, that is sort of punishing Lear, incurring a kind of suffering on him, confronting him with his own limitations and his own failures, right? Even as the logic of Lear and Gloucester's punishment makes sense, okay, the logic of Edmund's blessing, the logic of Edgar's curse, the logic of Goneril and Regan's flourishing, the logic of Cordelia's exile and Kent's disguise continues to not make sense, right? While the older men seem to have reaped what they have sown in a way that is just and reflects a kind of internal logic or law or order in the world, in the universe, in the cosmos. These individuals' character developments do not seem to reflect that logic. Well, in Act 4, it would seem that Shakespeare is pushing us further and further into this question, and also offering us in Act 4, which is the brightest of the acts of the play, in which there is relational reconciliation that comes to pass. And the bad guys like Edmund and Goneril and Regan begin. All right, it begins to be it begins to be evident that the world that they've made for themselves is beginning to unravel, to fray at the ends as their relationships with one another begin to unravel, to fray, and to dissolve into a kind of chaos. Okay, so basically, for our SQ3R, right, the speakers of the text are the characters, right? The genre, the style is tragedy. Okay, what a tragedy is all about on its most basic or abstract level is taking something disordered and putting it back into order using suffering. Okay, that is kind of what a tragic plot does. It takes a character who is disordered, perhaps morally, or just some kind of disordered, unjust thing that is not as it ought to be, and then it corrects it via suffering. Okay, um, now basically, right, how does that relate to Lear and Gloucester's character arcs? Well, their disorder, okay, was their disordered understanding of the world, okay, their disordered worldview, which is corrected by their suffering. Okay, now the question is, do they come to a satisfactory conclusion as characters? Do they respond to their correction with learning? Do they justify themselves to reality? Okay, what's the title of this section of text? Well, it's just Act 4, all right, which explores kind of two dominant impressions, all right? After Act 3, which the dominant impression of Act 3, okay, was the suffering of Lear and Gloucester, okay? That's kind of the centerpiece, okay, leading to the sort of climax of Act 3, or perhaps the better word for it, most intense scene of Act 3 in which Gloucester is blinded, all right, by Cornwall, right? Well, the two dominant impressions of Act 4 are the relational chaos incurred by those that follow the moral maxim of doing as they will, okay? So, in other words, the relationships, the alliances, the marriages of Goneril, Reagan, Cornwall, Albany, Edmund, all those who kind of did as they willed. All right, their lives, their relationships begin unraveling. Okay, and okay, those that have followed a kind of moral maxim to love one's neighbor, this kind of natural law that Kent and Cordelia seem to suggest exist. All right, like for instance, State Farm. Okay, the company State Farm. Its mantra, its slogan is "Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there." Okay, does the existence of that mantra point to a kind of natural tendency for human beings, regardless of their religious affiliation, regardless of their engagement with special revelation, uh, and also, importantly, regardless of their ability to do so perfectly. Does the fact that those kinds of statements exist just in the world, does the fact that law codes, law and order, and just treatment of other individuals, although imperfectly followed and diversely applied, does the fact that they have existed in various areas of the world to varying degrees all throughout world history, does it suggest that there's something natural or inherent about the cosmos, about God's good world that He made, that has this kind of embedded rule in it that those who love their neighbors well in the long run will be blessed and will flourish, and those who do as they will be cursed, and in the long run will reap what they have sowed. Is there that kind of justice? Well, obviously, in Act 4, Shakespeare begins to sort of suggest that perhaps there is, as the relational chaos of the evil begins to sort of punish them for doing as they will, with having others' will be done unto them. All right. And also, alternatively, okay, the characters like Kent and Cordelia and Edgar, okay, get a bit of wins, right? Edgar is reconciled to his father. Lear is given grace by Cordelia, who is sort of seen rightly by her father. Finally, okay. So again, what's our central question here? How does Shakespeare continue to develop his thematic impression in Act 4? Okay. Well, here's basically how Act 4 goes. Edgar, still disguised as poor Tom, meets the blinded Gloucester and agrees to take him to the glyphs of Dover. Okay. Instead of immediately revealing himself to his dad, he takes pity on his father, sees that he is blinded, doesn't immediately unveil himself as Edgar, understanding that either this could be unwise or understanding intuitively that perhaps his dad needed to have some kind of cathartic experience, which Edgar then helps him have, gives him grace, and then their relationship is reconciled. Okay. Uh, Meanwhile, Edmund and Goneril are on their way back to Goneril's castle. All right, they're met by Albany, and Albany begins to kind of oscillate from his original support of Goneril and begins to rebuke her for her treatment of Lear. Okay, rebuke her for her disrespect, for her unloving treatment of Lear. And she obviously just responds by mocking Albany's manhood and calling him a coward and all of these other things. Okay. Which is, pretty typical response by those who pursue immorality to those who pursue morality is to mock their to mock them as cowards, perhaps sheep followers, those that don't have the gall to do that which is that which they would want to. Okay, she and Edmund again is sort of. It is revealed that they are having an adulterous affair. They part with a kiss, okay? And Edmund goes back to Regan's to raise the bannermen of the Duke of Cornwall, okay? Because they need to go fight off Cordelia, who has arrived with the French army, okay? Albany, again, speaks directly to Goneril, rebuking her. She continues to mock him, all right? And then a messenger arrives that explains that Cornwall is dead. Okay, so Cornwall has died of the wounds that were inflicted on him by the servant number one, who stood up against Cornwall when he was blinding Gloucester. Okay, so servant number one obviously wounded Cornwall to a certain extent. Cornwall then killed him and then took the eyes out of Gloucester, but then succumbed to the wounds. Okay. Albany, when he learns that Edmund played a role in betraying his own father, sort of vows to take revenge on Edmund, and Albany here kind of oscillates from following Goneril to doing that which is good, but he does so in a somewhat equivocal way. He doesn't do so with his whole life and his whole heart. All right, he continues to sort of hover around in the corners of evil, even though he doesn't fully agree with what's going on. Okay. In the next scene, Kent and Gentleman discuss Cordelia's attitude toward Lear. Obviously, they're worried that Cordelia probably hates Lear because she banished him, and but nothing could be further from the truth. Cordelia is brokenhearted for her father. She wants to see Lear nursed back to health and to be okay. All right. The armies of Cornwall and Albany are approaching. Albany's armies are being led by Goneril primarily. Okay. And Lear is sort of oscillating between lucidity and madness. He needs rest, and he needs forgiveness. Okay, from Cordelia. Which he will get later. Okay, Cordelia returns on the scene. Okay, she articulates directly to the audience her concern for her father, her love for her father, and then she seeks him out. She sends a search party to go and find him. All right. Then Oswald, man of Goneril, servant of Goneril, delivers news to Regan that Albany is coming, or Goneril's is leading Albany's army to Regan, where they are going to join forces and fight against the French. And Oswald carries us this kind of mysterious letter that from Goneril to Edmund in his hand. Okay, so that says Regan, but that's wrong. It's Edmund. All right, Regan is super curious about what's in the letter. All right, assuming that it deals with Goneril and Edmund's love affair. Okay, obviously Regan also has the hots for Edmund. Edmund is like completely irresistible for some reason. well, not for some reason. Obviously, Shakespeare has a reason behind that. Okay, it is the sort of irresistibility of temporal power, the irresistibility, the inherent sexiness of wickedness in an upside down world, in a broken world. That which is evil seems almost irresistible. Okay, which is super relatable, right? Okay, so Regan then says, "Well, I am going to marry Edmund. Okay, not Goneril. I'm going to marry Edmund. And if you see Gloucester, by the way, I'll give you some money if you kill him. Okay, because he needs to be dead, so that Edmund and I can get married, and he can have the title of Earl of Gloucester. Okay." Meanwhile, Edgar is taking Gloucester to the cliffs of Dover. Gloucester wants to kill himself to jump off the cliffs and to die as kind of propitiation for the ways in which he has failed as a father and as a leader. Okay, Edgar pretends to take him to the cliffs of Dover, but doesn't actually take him all the way there. He says, "Okay, now you're there. Wow, it's super far down there. Okay, get ready to jump." All right, and Gloucester kind of counts to three, holds his breath, and then steps out and faints. Okay, because obviously he's very afraid to die, so he loses consciousness. He temporarily faints, and then Edgar, pretending to be another person, just kind of peasant, at the bottom of the cliffs, presumably, right, says, "Oh my gosh, wow, the god saved your life." Okay, actually, Edgar saved his life. Edgar's grace saved his life. This kind of supernatural, or perhaps even this obedience to the natural law, to honor one's parents, to love one's neighbor, implies a kind of graciousness that Edgar offers to Gloucester. Okay. Then Oswald shows up, tries to kill Gloucester. Edgar kills him. Boom, right? Good guy's winning. Yeah, all right. And he finds this letter from Goneril to Edmund, right? That mysterious letter from Goneril to Edmund that Regan wanted to read, and he opens it, and shocker, it's plotting Goneril's husband's murder, Albany. Okay, so in other words, right, Regan is jealous of Goneril. Goneril and Regan's relationships are deteriorating. They're obviously plotting to fight one another as soon as they get rid of France and Cordelia. They're sort of temporarily allies, but they're also obviously more deep-seated enemies. Edmund is manipulating both. Albany is going to be killed. They're betraying their own husbands. Cornwall has already died. Regan certainly has is certainly not upset about that, right? She's very excited to marry Edmund. In other words, all of this relational chaos seems to be the sort of just up comments of these characters, okay? And then finally, Lear, after being captured by Cordelia and her search party, is reunited with his daughter, and Cordelia forgives him. Okay, so there are these two kind of very dramatic moments of grace that are offered in Act 4, in which the wronged Edgar and the wronged Cordelia offer a kind of forgiveness, a kind of generous grace to their fathers. Okay, so that concludes our SQ3R. All right, so we're going to get into the details of Act 4 and sort of drill down on some of these impressions on Monday. Okay, so I hope you guys have a great day, a great weekend, right? This is a little bit of a shorter lecture, a little shorter video. Just make sure you have your SQ3R in your own notes so that you're completing your OTNs faithfully and that you're working on all of the additional assignments that you need to be working through. Okay, have a great day.